life. A life you helped destroy.
Come back, Derrick. Don't kill me.
I'm not gonna kill you. Your job will be to tell the rest of them that death is coming for them tonight. Tell them Eric Draven sends his regards.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine.
And I'm Derrick Ferguson.
How you doing today, Derrick?
I'm doing tolerably well, as the old folks say. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. So I actually found out something interesting, because our last episode, we did it on 1989's Batman. And
right.
I was originally going to plan to release the episode on Monday. And then I wake up one day and I get hit with an email from Comixology. And they say, it's Batman Day. So, they had a big Batman sale. And I'm like, oh, shit, it's Batman Day on Saturday. And we're waiting for the episode on Monday. So we actually ended up timing that perfectly.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a couple of people ask me too. They said, "Oh, you guys, you guys, you planned that out, right?" I said, "Believe it or not, no." I said, "We had no idea Batman Day was coming up."
Yeah, and luckily I'd finished editing the episode, and it was already scheduled for release on Monday. So then right away, I jumped into there, and I'm like, okay, I'm changing the release date to right now.
Yeah, well, why not? I told people, I said, you know what? It's just one of those things. It just happened to work out like that, which I'm glad it did, because a lot of people seem to have enjoyed it,
Yeah.
But sometimes these happy accidents just work out like that. Yeah.
And speaking of kind of related, not quite as timed perfectly, but today's September 25th. Do you know whose birthday is today?
Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve, yeah, Superman, who we did we gushed about in the first episode.
Oh, absolutely. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
today's his birthday. Wow.
But yeah, it's been going good so far. Our show's been getting some numbers. We've got about 1,000 to 2,000 people listening every episode now, and we're only in 2 episodes in.
Wow, we're only 2 episodes. So, and for everybody that's listening to this now, for you 2,000 people that listen to this now, thank you very much. Both Perry and I, we appreciate the support. I mean, we figured that people would be interested in this, but we had no idea that, it would be such a response like that. Wow. Yeah. I mean, like you said, only 2 episodes in, and, we're getting those type of numbers. That's really fantastic. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And, we've been getting emails from people, people we've known for years, Dale Glazer, Mark Buskett, sending us emails, telling us how much they're loving the show. And, it's awesome, because we love doing this. Derrick and I, we've been chatting about superhero films and comic books and whatnot for years. And it's really nice to know that people like listening to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially now with the plethora of podcasts that are out there. Because let's face it, everybody and their mother is doing a podcast now. So there's a lot of stuff out there to listen to. And, like I always say to people, I always appreciate, when they give you their time, because that's the one thing that they can't, that's the one coin that when people pay you, they can't get it back. Money, yeah, you get money back, but not time. So to me, it really means a lot to me that people say, okay, I'm going to make time, to listen to this. Again, I hope that we continue to inform and entertain, and you guys keep listening. And please let us know what you like, what you want us to talk about. And if we mess up, by all means, tell us that too. We're human. We're fallible. We make mistakes. So if we're doing something wrong, by all means, let us know. We always want to improve. That's our goal here. We want to improve and make this podcast a better production in all ways possible.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, today, we're going to be talking about a movie that's very special to me personally, and that's The Crow from 1994.
Yay! No, actually, after watching this movie today, you know what? And I've said, well, you know what? You go ahead and you talk first, because you picked this out, and like you said is personal to you, and then I'll jump in and give you my impression. So you go ahead first, my friend.
Okay, so The Crow is based on a comic book of the same name, written and drawn by James O'Barr, and it was a very personal story for him because he lost his girlfriend. She died in a drunk driving accident.
Oh wow!
And as a way to work through, his grief, he created this character, which was it was inspired by so many things that he liked growing up. And if you read the original graphic novel, like, you can see the influences all over it. That, like, the character of Eric was modeled on Iggy Pop. There were so many references to punk music and gothic fiction, Paradise Lost, poetry, Emily Dickinson poems. Like, there's almost everything in the kitchen sink is crammed into this series, which is also ironic because Kitchen Sink Press eventually published the graphic novel for a time.
Yeah, this was an independent comic, right?
Yeah, it was 4 issues, originally published by Caliber Comics in '89, and then it became this underground success, and then Tundra Publishing reprinted it in 2 double-sized volumes, and then Kitchen Sink got the rights, and they collected it into the first complete graphic novel, and they also published a few miniseries based on that. Later on, Image got the rights to the Eric Draven character, and they relaunched it, where they did it. It was supposed to be an ongoing series, which would show him kind of like, because the Crow TV show came out at the same time as this, so it had kind of a similar approach to that, but where his story would continue after he got revenge. But it only lasted 10 issues, though it is a really good series. I recommend people check it out. And now IDW Publishing has the rights, and they've reprinted pretty much everything, except the original graphic novel is available through Simon & Schuster now.
Okay.
So lots of stuff. But me, like most people, I didn't read the comic first. I came to it through the movie, which came out in 1994, but I didn't see it until probably a few years after that, when I was about 13, 14 years old, I believe, something like that. And when I saw it, this movie, it had a massive impact on me as a 13, 14-year-old kid. I was like this shy, introverted kid. So this movie spoke to me just like it spoke to a lot of people who were in that place in the 90s.
One of those movies that became like a cult hit due to VHS, and it was being shown like on HBO all the time, right? Absolutely,
yeah. And it wasn't like a huge box office hit or anything like that, but it was VHS that kept this movie alive. Just like with Fight Club, right? It didn't do too well in the theaters, but it became a cult hit later on when it went to DVD. And the same thing happened with The Crow. And like most people, I saw this. I rented it. I rented it from the public library, actually, the first time I saw it.
Oh wow! Okay.
Most of us, that's how we saw it. We rented it from Blockbuster, rented it from the public library, or like you said, we caught it on HBO or something like that. And it spoke to like disaffected, introverted youth in a way that very few movies at the time. Because you got to remember, people, this was pre-X-Men, so there was nothing like this out there for guys like me.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because I do remember seeing this during its original theatrical run. I saw this in 94. I think, was I still working for the Board of Education then? I think I was, because usually what I would do is like on a Friday after work, I would go to the movies. Mm-hmm. And because I worked in Manhattan. And, I would go see anything. Me, I don't care what time. So I do recall seeing this in a theater, and I'd say, it's okay, but it didn't really turn my crank. And then I saw it years later, because like I said, it was on HBO. It was like one of those movies that is like, it seemed like every time I turned on TV and turned on HBO, The Crow was on. It would be The Crow or The Beastmaster or, it was like The Stroker Race. It was like one of these handful of movies, like it seemed like they were showing it constantly. And I think that's where it started to grow the huge following that it has now. Because this movie does have a massive following.
It does. Yeah, even to this day, like, people are still finding this movie and still falling in love with it.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it today in preparation for this, and I have to say that I found a new appreciation for this movie. I think mainly because now there are people in there that I didn't know before, like John Polito is in this movie, which I completely forgot. Ernie Hudson is in this movie, which I completely forgot. How I forgot her. Tony Todd is in this movie.
Tony Todd, coming right off of Candyman, actually, because Candyman came out, I think, like a year or two before this.
Right. I mean, there's all these people that's in this movie. Like I said, I haven't seen this movie in about 10 years. And as I'm watching it, and I keep on saying, oh, shit, because there's all these people in there that I'm recognizing. I'm saying, wow, how did I forget that these people were in this movie, you know?
And don't forget Bai Ling is in it, too.
Yeah, Bai Ling. Yeah, because the only one that I really remembered that was in was, of course, Brandon Lee, who died so tragically in a now legendary manner while he was making this movie. You know, Brandon Lee, the son of the great Bruce Lee.
And it's really tragic because you look at Brandon Lee's filmography, and he did Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren. He did Rapid Fire. These very low budget, kind of slapped together action movies.
And Rapid Fire. That's a great action movie. That, if you haven't seen it, folks, make that your homework assignment. I really like, Showdown in Little Tokyo is okay, but, I kind of like give the Asian Rapid Fire. Maybe because it's him and he's doing all these martial arts and, and he's not his father. I mean, nobody is his father, but he is pretty damn good.
They actually offered him, because this movie, this was around the same time that they were making Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Right.
With Jason Scott Lee.
Yeah. No relation.
But they asked Brandon if he wanted to play his father in the Bruce Lee story, and he turned it down.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. And actually, I mean, it's like half remember, because I haven't seen Dragon in probably 15, 20 years, but I'm pretty sure I remember the movie ends with the birth of Brandon Lee, and I think there's a dedication to him at the end of it because he died before Dragon came out.
Right.
Now, it is interesting that you mentioned John Polito, because have you ever read the original comic this was based on?
No, I didn't know anything like you. I saw the movie first, and I had no idea that The Crow was a comic book until like years later. And I always said to myself, "Oh yeah, well I'm gonna read the comic." But for one reason or another, I never got around to it.
Yeah, well, it's a good comic. I definitely recommend checking it out. But the funny thing is about John Polito is the character he plays in the movie, Gideon, the pawn shop owner. James O'Barr, he based that character on John Polito. So in the comics, it looks just like John Polito too. And then when they were casting for this movie, they asked O'Barr, who do you have any suggestions? And he said, well, I want, he's like, you're not going to get him, but I would love it if John Polito could play Gideon. And sure enough, they were able to get him.
It's another example. We were talking earlier how things just happen to work out. It's really weird that he drew this character with the actor in mind, and then happened to get the actor to play the role that he had in mind for him in the beginning. It's really, and like I said, John Polito. When I saw him, I said, "Oh my God, John Polito!" I said, "How could I forget this guy was in this movie?" It's it was wild.
And he's got such a memorable scene in this movie too. Like when Eric comes into the pawn shop, like that is one of the best scenes in the movie. Yeah,
I mean they have such a. You know what? I like the way that people really interact with the Eric Draven character in this movie. Because. You know how usually, like in these movies, people take a lot of time, like saying, listen, you can't be here. You're dead and everything like that. Nobody does that in this movie. They just take it as a given. Well, this guy came back from the dead and they deal with it from there.
Well, the one exception to that is you've got Albrecht and T-Bird. They're the only ones who really have that "you're dead, you can't be here" reaction, but they do it in very different ways.
Yeah, and you know what? Even Albrecht, that's the character played by Ernie Hudson. I mean, no, that's the cop. He kind of like very quickly adjusts to the situation.
He does, yeah. Because there's the scene when he knows because he figures it out. You know, he kind of figures out that this guy with the makeup is Eric Draven, and then when they finally have that sit down in his apartment, right? You know, Eric just appears and he's like, freeze, and he drops the beer bottle and he's like, shit, man, don't do that.
Yeah, right. Oh man, don't do that.
He has this brief reaction where he's like, wait a minute, I saw you die, you were buried, but you're back, and then he just kind of adjusts to it really quickly.
Yeah, you know, he doesn't waste a lot. He doesn't waste a time, you know, and that's what I like. That's one of the things I like about this movie. For those of you who don't know the plot of this movie, very quickly, Perry, run through the plot.
So the plot of the movie is you had this couple, Eric Draven and Shelley Webster, and they're murdered by a gang of arsonists because Shelley was trying to fight eviction in their apartment building. And the guy who owns the building, Top Dollar, he sent one of his gangs to shut them up. So they break into their apartment on Devil's Night, night before Halloween, and they rape and they murder Shelley. They leave her in like a really bad position. She ends up in intensive care for 30 hours. And then in the middle of this assault, her fiance Eric walks in and they kill him, they shoot him, they stab him, and they throw him out the window, and he falls 6 stories to his death. Now, a year later, Eric comes back to life through the power of the crow. And it's told very quickly. Like, they don't spend a lot of time on the whys and wherefores of this. They just kind of jump right into it. Like, right in the beginning, you have Sarah, the little girl played by Rochelle Davis. Her voiceover, she says, you know, people once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes something so bad happens, the soul can't rest. And sometimes the crow can bring that soul back to set the wrong things right. And that opening narration, that's all you need to understand what's happening throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was watching this movie today, and the one thing that really impressed me about this movie is that this is, you know what? If they were making this movie now, it would probably be about like 3 hours long, and they would go into all this backstory about Eric and his girlfriend, and you know, and Albrecht, and you know, because now people are obsessed with backstory. Oh well, we gotta know the backstory of this. We don't know the backstory of nobody in this movie.
No, not at all.
This is like real old school, old fashioned filmmaking. We're just presented with the characters as they are now. We're not concerned with what they were before the events of this movie.
Right. And they do such a good job of establishing those character relationships in seconds. Boom, it's done. And it's like, you know, you see at the beginning of the movie, it opens with the aftermath of the murder. And so Albrecht's there. He's at the scene of the crime. Sarah comes up and, you know, he asks, and, you know, Shelley says, you know, tell him to take care of Sarah. And then Albrecht asks her, you're Sarah? And she says, yeah. He's like, look, you know, your sister. And she's like, no, she's not my sister. Her and Eric just take care of me. So, yeah. And then you find out why, because, you know, her mom's, you know, this drug addict, who's sleeping with one of the guys. And you get the sense maybe she might be a prostitute as well on the side. But again, like, this stuff is not really spelled out. It's just, everything is just like lightly hinted. And then you see, like, a year later, you see that Albrecht's kind of taken over that role because she comes by the hot dog stand and he's very friendly with her. He buys her dinner.
Yeah.
And it's never stated. It's never said outright. It's just very quickly established in quick succession. And then they just move on.
Yeah. And then you know, they have a really nice, sweet kind of relationship, this cop and this, you know, little girl and everything like that. And one thing, and you know what, if the movie was made now, you know, you'd have people saying, oh, yeah, well, it's inappropriate for him to be friends with this young girl and everything like that. But you know something, if you look at the movie, you see that there's never a hint to anything like that in the thing.
No, not at all.
You know? I mean, you know, people read too much. This is such. Okay, the storytelling in this movie is so efficient. That's the word I'm looking for. This is efficient storytelling that tells you exactly what you need to know, when you need to know it, and tells you no more than that.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're saying with the beginning, like, how does the crow bring them back to life? How does he have powers? Like, none of that is explained at all. It's just like, look, there's a magic crow. It brings people back from the dead. That's it.
Yeah, it's magic. Mm-hmm. That's it. The girl told you in the beginning. Yeah, well, you know, the crow comes and brings people back to life to, you know, avenge. You know, okay, boom. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, and there's no big research scene where you see her sitting in a library, like leafing through old books or anything like that. It's just all it's boom. We've established it. Let's move on.
Exactly. Like I said, you know, and I'll say it again. If they were making this movie now, you would have people that would say, "Oh, well, that's a plot hole." Well, what do you mean that's a plot hole? Well, they never explain how the crow comes back. It's magic, stupid.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves these days is people talking about plot holes who clearly don't know what that word means.
Oh, no. Know what it is? Plot hole is shorthand for, well, I don't understand it, so it must be a plot hole.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like that's not a plot hole. That's not how plot holes work.
No, it's not a plot hole. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But I mean, this is it's tight, efficient storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's, you know.
In fact, speaking of, it's so efficient. The three main bad guys, their names are never spoken on screen. You know, Michael Wincott's character, Top Dollar, Vi Ling's character, Maya, and Tony Todd, Grange. Their names are in the credits, but they're never once spoken on screen.
Yeah, you know something? Now that I think about it, you're absolutely right. Michael Wincott, he's never referred to by name.
No, not once.
But again, the way this story moves, it's something you don't see. Okay, I didn't even notice that until you pointed it out, you know, just now. But that's how caught up I got up in this story. And here's the thing: even though it doesn't have a long run time and it's so efficient, the movie never feels like it's rushing.
No, and the way that, you know, Wincott and Ling and Todd, they established their characters. Their characters have this presence, so you don't even really. That's why you don't even notice that they don't say their names, because until you get to the end, and then you're like, wait a second. But they have this big presence in the movie. All three of them do a really great job of stealing the scene when they're in the movie. That you never really notice that.
But see, that's what happens when you have a director like Alex Proyas. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
Yeah.
He's a guy that also directed one of my absolute favorite all-time movies, Dark City.
One of our favorites. I love that movie.
Oh, man. And he's a guy that, and also, you know what? I'm going to try to squeeze in Dark City. Excuse me. I'm going to try to squeeze in Dark City in a future episode by trying to, in my pathetic way, to explain why I think it's a superhero origin story. So, okay. So I'm going to try to do that, folks. But Alex Proyas is such a visual stylist that he says a lot with just images.
Oh, you know, just a brief digression about Dark City. Like, everyone talks about The Matrix as being this real visionary movie. No, fuck that. Dark City is the real visionary movie, and it came out before The Matrix.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, people, you know what? And not to knock The Matrix because it's an okay movie, but for people like me and you that have been reading comic books and watching Japanese action movies,
Hong Kong action movies, John Woo, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All that stuff for years. There wasn't anything new in The Matrix we hadn't seen already.
Right.
You know, that was for the people here that didn't know this stuff. But, you know, like I told people, I said, there's nothing new in The Matrix.
Although this movie does have a Matrix connection, though, The Crow, because the Wachowskis, they have said that if he had survived, Brandon Lee would have been their ideal choice for Neo.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, definitely, I can see that. Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about Brandon Lee, because he did Rapid Fire, he did Showdown in Little Tokyo. He hadn't really broken out of that mold, so nobody really took him seriously as an actor. And in fact, when he was first cast, James O'Barr was upset because he thought they were just going to turn it into a kung fu movie, because the only thing he'd seen Lee in was Showdown in Little Tokyo. And then it wasn't until he actually met him on set and he saw him in the makeup and in the costume that he's like, oh, holy shit. And he said that he was amazed by by Brandon's take on the character when he spoke the lines from the comics, and it was like he came right out of the comics. And Brandon Lee, you can tell, he took this material very, very seriously. He loved that comic book, and it shows in his performance. And he gives an amazing performance in this movie.
He took it so seriously that, and there's one thing that I like in this movie. If you notice, Eric Draven doesn't do any martial arts.
No, not really.
Because he's not a martial artist.
Yeah.
So he doesn't. So we don't get this guy. He's a musician, yeah, but we don't all of a sudden, he's not like flying through the air, yeah. And I mean, giving guys judo chops and kicking them and doing everything. He does a couple of backflips and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But basically, he's just punching guys out and But he's not doing any of the martial arts moves that you would see Brandon Lee do in any of his other movies.
No, in fact, if this is the only movie that you've seen Brandon Lee in, which is probably true for a lot of people, because because Rapid Fire and Showdown in Little Tokyo, they weren't big hit movies. So not, especially now, a lot of people probably don't even know about them. But if you had only seen this movie, you would not know Brandon Lee was a martial artist.
Exactly. You would not even guess that. They said, okay, you would hear the name, but you wouldn't associate him with being the son of Bruce Lee if you had just seen this movie. Because like I said, he doesn't do any martial arts in this movie, Which
well, even in this movie, just going by, he doesn't really look like his father at all in this movie.
No. Now, in Rapid Fire, if you've ever seen Rapid Fire, he does look a lot like his father.
Oh, yeah. Which is, it's kind of amazing, because you see him in other stuff when he's got his hair pulled back or his hair shorter. He looks a lot more like his father. But in this, it's just something about the way he plays that character. It's like the Christopher Reeve thing we were talking about in Superman and Michael Keaton and Batman. He fully becomes that character.
Yeah. Well, he's fully committed to this role that he's playing. And I think that what it is, too, is that he was determined to make his mark as an actor and not just as a martial artist.
And it's so tragic, because this movie, I think it may have taken a few years if there was no tragedy on the set, but he would have eventually had a breakout. This would have been a breakout role, or at least a major milestone in his acting career.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, no doubt, because he goes through such a gamut of emotions in this movie, and he even manages a little bit of there are some scenes where he's actually very funny, where he confronts some of the bad guys that he's after, and he has these little witty one-liners that he throws off and everything like that. He's actually very funny. And then in the scenes where we have to see his grief over this tragedy that's happened to him and his girlfriend, it's very real. You could feel it coming through the screen. I mean, it's a great performance. It's wonderful.
Oh, it's amazing. If you haven't seen this movie, your impression of it might be, it's a depressing movie for goth kids, right? And you would think that just looking at the aesthetic of it and everything and the reputation it has, but you watch this movie and Brandon Lee does not play Eric like that at all, right? He's not going around moping the whole time and citing poetry. He does some of that, but he also mixes it in with a lot of humor, like you said, and he transitions to it so seamlessly. And there are parts in this movie when you think, because there's a subtle undercurrent that he's going insane because of this, because of his grief, because of everything he's experienced, and they play it in only a few bits, like when he when he's playing the guitar on the roof and then he smashes it.
Yeah.
Or when he asks Albrecht to tell him what happened to them, and then he says, she was beaten and raped, and he gets this like look of terror on his face, and Albrecht's like, well, Jesus, man, I'm sorry, but you asked.
Yeah. I love that. So he's, hey man, listen, you asked, okay? Don't freak out now, And then
that scene with them in the apartment, that is one of the most human scenes and one of the most beautiful scenes in this whole movie.
Yeah, because Eric, then he demonstrates he has these abilities, and one of them is that he touches Albrecht by the head and he gets all the memories that he had. And like he thanks him. He says, oh man, he said, you stayed with her the whole time. And he said, yeah. But I want her to be by herself. And I was hoping she could tell me who did this. And
it's funny because you can see that Albrecht's still trying to play the role of hard-nosed cop, right? Because you get the sense that it's never explicitly stated, but the graphic novel was set in Detroit, and Devil's Night is a thing that was going on in Detroit back in the day. So it's heavily implied that they're in Detroit in this movie. And so you get the sense that Albrecht's this kind of like hard-nosed Detroit cop who's kind of seen it all, and he tries to keep emotion separate from it.
Yeah.
When Eric says that to him, he's like, I saw her through your eyes, and he's like, you were with her the whole time. Albrecht has this moment where he's like, whoa, wait, hey, like I'm just a guy doing a job. Like he's trying to deny that he has any emotional attachment to this case.
Right, exactly. But again, if he doesn't have any emotional attachment to the case, why does he still have the file in his apartment a year later? He's still trying to piece together what happened and figure out who did this to this girl. You said something interesting. Yeah, because I did not realize this was supposed to be taking place in Detroit. I just thought this was like a generic, nameless type of city.
Right.
But the city itself is like a character in this movie. And I was watching it while I was watching it today, and I was thinking back to when we were talking about the 1989 Batman. Mm-hmm. And I said, something? This is what Gotham City should have looked like in that movie.
And nothing against, because again, we both love the aesthetic of Batman and the Gothic style of it, but it's not a city. But like I said when we talked about that, it's not a city that feels lived in.
Right,
this is a city that feels lived in.
Yeah, this city is lived in, is dirty, is grimy. It looks like some place that no sane person would want to live in,
Right.
And you get the feeling that people live here because they simply can't afford to go anywhere else. This is like a miserable city, And I was looking at it and I said, wow, this is, this is great.
There are little things I notice because I've seen this movie probably like in the triple digits, all right?
Okay.
But like I've seen this movie so much, I could put it on mute and I would be able to recite it line from line. And I would have the timing right. I would have every single word. I guarantee you I could do that. But I still noticed some new things about it when I was watching it. And there are two things I noticed. One thing is that the police force here is obviously corrupt. Like that detective, Torres, he's obviously on the take.
Oh, yeah. Hell, yeah. You can look at that guy and tell he's good. Well, you look at his clothes. The guy dresses too well to be cop.
Yeah. But like, and I'm thinking back to it because he says, he's like, who gave the order to move her? And he's like, nobody moves her. And he's like, well, she's dying. What do you expect us to do? And he's like, I don't care. Right. So that's kind of a weird thing for a cop to do. And then also like he's getting pissed off at Albrecht for not telling him more about not doing more about this vigilante who's killing scumbags. Right. And he demotes him then, he puts him on suspension. And they said that, Albrecht was busted before for, he was demoted before because he was sticking his nose where it wasn't wanted because he was trying to investigate who killed these two.
Right. Well, I believe there is a line where Torres tells him, that's how come you lost your gold shield. Implying that he was a detective, at one time, and he got busted back to, being a, regular street cop.
And so you can tell that Torres is probably on the take. And then you've got Top Dollar. Now, this is the other thing I noticed, which is really interesting, is that the speech he gives right before, in front of all the other crime figures, right before Eric busts in, right? Yeah. And he talks about how, he's like, the idea has become the institution. He's like, I started the first fires, and before I knew it, everybody else was imitating me. And you compare that to the scene when he first appears, right? When we first see him, and he's kind of like got this like despondent look on his face, and he says, my dad gave me this, and he told me that your childhood's over the moment you know you're going to die. But when he sees Eric for the first time, like, he seems to like get a new sense of like purpose. So you get the feeling like it kind of reminds me of General Zod in Superman 2 after he conquered the world. Like, remember, he's sitting in the White House, and what's her name? I can't remember her name now, but she says to him, Ursa says to him, you are master of all you survey. And he says, just like I was the day before and the day before that. And he seems really bored with the idea. He wants conquest. He wants something to do. I get that same kind of vibe from Top Dollar, that he's been this kind of like anarchist type of guy who lit fires for the fun of it. And now he's this crime lord, and he's bored with it.
Well, it's that age-old dilemma that plagues humanity constantly. We always want something. There's something we always want. But when we get it, we find that having it, we built up the anticipation so much. That was the fun part, the anticipation, the getting it. And once we get it, then we say, oh, well, you know what? This wasn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. And you do get that sense that, there's no challenge for him. He's reached the pinnacle of his profession, so to speak. And, there's no challenge. There's nothing left for him to do until this guy comes along who provides him with a challenge. He's a guy that can't be killed. So, hey, what better challenge can there be for him other than, trying to kill a guy who can't be killed?
And then it puts his last lines into a lot more context, because, right before, when they're up on the roof, and he says to Eric, well, if it's any consolation to you, you've put a smile on my face. And that line makes so much more sense in that context.
Yeah. Because he was having fun. He was enjoying himself. This was a challenge to him. This is somebody that was, an equal. Yeah. Almost. That scene that's on the roof, most, final scenes, with the bad guy, it doesn't have a kind of resonance, okay, the hero kills the bad guy and that's it. But you really do get a sense of this, if that's the right word, when Eric finally achieves what he's been trying to do after all this time. Because I think, wait a minute, does he kill Ba Ling too? No, the crow kills her.
The crow, it pecks out her eyes, and then she falls.
Yeah, poor child.
Going back to Ernie Hudson, because Ernie Hudson is masterful in this movie. And going to, like, how we talked about how people just kind of accept things, like, he comes in to that church, and he's got the most practical plan someone should have in a movie like this. He says, okay, look, you stand out in front. When they're done shooting at you, once they run out of ammo, then I'll arrest them.
Yeah. Oh, which is a very practical plan. In a lot of ways, Ernie Hudson is the stand-in for the audience in this movie. Because he's basically the everyman, type of character. Even the little girl, she's got ties to Eric and stuff like that. So she's more emotionally invested. And she's really not she's a character that's standing off to the side. And she's observing things. It's not like Ernie Hudson, who is actually, he's actually part of everything that's going on, and he helps move the plot along because he gives Eric a lot of information and he backs him up when he needs to be. But he's more or less our stand-in because he's the most regular, normal person that's in the movie. Because even the little girl, like you said earlier, her mother, she's a drug addict. She's a part-time prostitute and everything like that. So, and even though you have a nice little scene where they bond after her mother, she encounters Eric and he uses another one of his abilities to draw the drugs out of her system. And he has that wonderful line where he says that, mother is the name for God, little children, that's the name for God.
Yeah, he's like, mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children.
Right. And he said, go be a mother. And she goes, and the next thing she's doing, she's making breakfast for her kid. And even the kid is freaked out. The kid is like, wait a minute, you don't make breakfast.
You get the sense that this is not going to be an easy transition for either of them.
Right.
She gets up and she's like, what drug did you take to become Mother of the Year? She's like, how high are you right now? And she's like, no, it wasn't drugs. Someone just kind of woke me up. And she's like, you're acting weird. And then, Darla gets, she's like, I can't do this. She's like, forget it. I was never good at this mommy shit. And then Sarah, she stops. She's like, no, wait. I'll eat the. So you get the sense that they're gonna try, but it's not gonna be easy. Mom. Yeah.
And she calls her mom because before she was calling her by her name, which is why you didn't know this was her mother, because she goes to the bar. They had a scene before that where she goes to the bar and she's calling her darling.
First time I saw this movie, I thought it was, maybe it was her sister or something like that.
Right. Yeah. You didn't know that was her mother until, later on. And then
when the bartender, he gives her a root beer and he said, and they see Darla going up the stairs with Fun Boy. And he says, look, your mom, technically she's off right now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the first time you find out.
And then that's when you realize, oh, shit, that's her mother. But that scene, they had the breakfast scene. And like you said, the genius of the writing in this movie in that they don't instantly bond and have a happy ending. Mm-hmm. No, but there is the seed in there that they're going to work toward a better relationship now, Yeah. Because now she's got that wake-up call, which, I really have to thank you for recommending this movie because, like I said, now I've seen it. And after, all this time has went by, I'm watching it with fresh eyes, and I developed a new appreciation for this movie because it's got a lot of love. It's not just a superhero movie. It's not just that, but it's got elements of horror movie. It's got elements of a revenge action movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie has lasted so long and enjoyed the reputation that it does.
It's a tragic romance?
Yeah, because it's got so many different elements and they all work together. They're not working against each other. They all work together.
Yeah, it's a masterclass in how to weave different stories together and different tones too. Like we're talking about the humor Eric uses. It softens the blow and he knows when's the right time to use the humor. And I love the Marvel movies, but sometimes they may lean a little bit too much in the humor area. Whereas this one, it always has that perfect balance.
Yeah, they've had a tendency to, in recent movies, and I'm with you there, I love them a lot, but they tend to get a little bit too jokey sometimes. Mm-hmm. Whereas with a little bit of gravitas, we would take it a little more, seriously, like the Captain America movies. Captain America movies know when to strike that right balance, and have a little bit of humor to balance out things. And as much as I love the Black Panther movies and the Thor movies and all the other movies, the Captain America movies is like the crown jewel of, the MCU. Those are like three damn near perfect movies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Taking it back to this movie, what did you think about the guys who played the gang members? So we had T-Bird, Fun Boy, Tintin, and Skank.
One of them played by, again,
Michael Massey.
No, David Patrick Kelly.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to mention Michael Massey. Oh, right, yeah. In fact, interesting thing about Kelly. You know how in the flashback scene, at the murder scene, he's quoting from Paradise Lost, right? He says, abashed the devil stood and felt how awful goodness is. And he says it right before Eric sets his car on fire. Right. Kelly added those lines into the movie because he read the comic, he read the source material, and he loved it. And so then he had this copy of Paradise Lost, and he brought it to the set. And he just randomly starts reading from the book as if he found it in Eric and Shelley's apartment, and he just threw that in himself.
But you know what? Again, I'm not surprised because that's how good of an actor he is. And he was another guy. When I saw this movie, I said, "Oh shit! How could I forget that he was in this movie?" He was, and the guys that play. You know what I like about all of the game? You can't get them confused because they all got distinct personalities.
They're all
batshit insane, but they're all distinct, different personalities, and they are sadistic and brutal, but again, they each have little moments where they get to be funny as well. Mm-hmm. Like when the guy goes, the black guy, when he goes to the pawn shop. And him and John Polito, they have wonderful exchange together.
Oh, that's such a funny exchange.
And John Polito, he's over there. Okay, this guy is trying to sell him stolen stuff. He knows it's stolen, so he's gonna, he's not gonna pay this guy what it's worth. And Tintin knows he's not paying him what he's worth. And these are two guys that know that they tried to bullshit each other, and they just have a wonderful dialogue back and forth together.
Yeah, he picks up the purse and he's like, what? There's blood on this, man.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and he says it's just so casually.
Yeah, he said there's blood on this. He said, so what? So wash it off. What the hell? And even when Tintin has his confrontation with Eric, there's even a little bit of humor in there that he gets in there.
David Patrick Kelly, T-Bird. He's got a moment of, like remorse, which is wonderfully played. Like, he's smart talking. He's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But then he realizes that it's Eric. Yeah. And then this like, with Albrecht, it's a similar reaction, but completely different. Whereas this is he's like, you can't be you. He's like, this is the really real world. There's no coming back. And he starts freaking out. And then he starts reciting the line from Paradise Lost again. Abashed the devil stood and felt how awful goodness is. And so that's like this, he's starting to feel remorse for what he did.
Too late now, buddy. You should have thought that shit before.
Definitely too late, yeah.
But him, and then you have that other guy. I don't know if he's supposed to be like a meth head or whatever, but he just totally he just totally loses it.
Oh no, not Fun Boy. Skank.
Angel Davis. He just loses it. he just, and then there's Tony Todd, who is like the best kind of henchman. He's almost like a James Bond kind of henchman.
He is. He's very much a James Bond henchman.
Yeah, he reminded me a lot of. I said, you know what? He should have been in the James Bond movie playing this guy.
Oh my God! Why did nobody ever think of that?
Yeah,
he would have been perfect.
Because he's like really laid back. He's efficient at his job.
Yeah,
but he's like also kind of laid back and he's kind of relaxed. And, he like looks after his boss kind of, and he puts clues together because he's the guy that goes to the graveyard, and he puts the clues together and he said, oh, okay, well, this guy came back from the dead. And you can see he kind of takes it in his stride too, just like everybody else in this movie, taking it in his stride that this is a guy that came back from the dead.
Yeah. And then you got Michael Massey as Fun Boy, he's great in this. Like he's playing this heroin addicted nutcase.
Eric shoots him in the leg, and the only thing he's concerned about, he said, man, look what you did to my sheets.
Yeah, that whole scene, like talking about the humor again, right? Brandon Lee is so funny in that scene.
Yeah, because he puts his hand right up against the gun barrel. Because someone pulls out this big honking huge gun, and he puts his hand up against the barrel, right up against it, so take your best shot.
Yeah, take your shot. And then he shoots him and he starts laughing. It's interesting because now that I realize this, Eric adjusts his approach he tailors it for each of the villains.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With Fun Boy, he's laughing, he's joking, he's very manic. With T-Bird, he's stoic. He never says a word. He never says a word to T-Bird, right? Other than drive. That's all he says. But when he's like taping him to the chair and T-Bird's freaking out, Eric doesn't say a word. And then with Tintin, he's very much like in full-on revenge mode because that was like he was one of the most brutal ones to her. So he shows that brutality back to him. Yeah,
he's very physical. He beats him up. And I think there's a scene where, like I said, they find his dead body and they say, yeah, somebody stuck him with his own knives in all of his major organs in alphabetical order. So Eric plainly took his time with him, He just didn't kill him, like outright. He took his time with him.
And then with Skank, right? He just kind of like tosses him out the window because he's like, this guy, he's like nobody. He's nothing.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, because he's a follower. He's just a drug addicted, follower. He's not, he wasn't like one of the major guys that was involved in all the brutality that, went into, his girl being killed. And, it was, let me see. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, again, we see how there's so much more working in this movie than you would think from Secret. Like you said, the way he takes his revenge on each gang member, tailors it to their personality.
Yeah.
That takes some thought. That just doesn't happen by accident. The director or the writer and the actors, whoever, they all sat down and they thought about this and they said, okay, well, there's a lot of thought that went into this movie. It's not just your generic grindhouse, exploitation type of movie. There was a lot of thought that went into this movie, into the characterizations, into how they interact with each other. The scenes together, because the emotions that are at play between the little girl and the cop and Eric, that in itself becomes like a nice little family type of dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. They actually changed a lot of stuff from the original comic. But you know what? It's this really cool thing because it's very different from the comic, but at the same time, it really captures the spirit of the comic.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. You know what? And a lot of people, they always complain about this. They always say, oh, how come they changed it? I hate when they change it. I hate it. Well, you know what? They have to change it because film and comics are two different mediums.
Exactly.
So things, for whatever reason, they have to be changed. And me, really, I'm with you. As long as they keep the spirit of the original, I'm good with whatever change that they make, provided that the change is organic and it enhances the story. And it does. Now, see, after watching this movie, I almost don't want to read the comic because I enjoy this movie so much. I don't want anything spoiled for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I can understand that. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, if I read the comic, even though I'm going to read it anyway, because usually you go to, what's that online thing, that comic?
Comixology.
Yeah, Comixology.
Yeah.
I mean,
although this one, it's not available on Comixology. It looks like Simon & Schuster, they do have it available as a Kindle edition. So it's available on Amazon, but for some reason, they don't have it on Comixology as well.
Because Comixology, man, they're taking all of my money.
Oh God, tell me about it, man. That Batman sale they just had, like I just bought like the whole Nightfall collection.
Oh, for God's sake. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they're practically giving shit away.
Yeah. Oh God, the Marvel sales are unbelievable. Like every month or so, they got a Marvel sale where they're discounting stuff, trades for like $2.
Yeah, and I said, well, how are they making any money on this?
Well, you know how, because every time they do that, I end up spending like $80 on trades.
Yeah. I know you're right. I think I think the last time that they had a sale, I easily spent about $40 or $50.
Oh, it's so easy because I'm like, add to cart. It's only $2. Then I look at the checkout, I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's how they get you. Because it's only $2, $3. Click. And then, like you said, when you get to the checkout, and then you say, well, you know what? I done went to the edge of the cliff. Why not jump off? You know what?
I get the sticker shock when I see the total. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to remove some of these. Now I'm going through and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to. Fuck, fine, I'll just buy them all.
Yeah, right. There you go. It's what the hell? Click.
Yeah.
I'm here now. Pull the trigger.
Yeah.
What the hell? But like I said, I almost don't want to spoil it because this movie is so well put together, and I don't want anything to spoil my enjoyment of it. But let me ask you another question. You were talking about, the TV series and, everything that were. How come this movie was never remade?
They've been talking about remaking it several times.
Okay.
So there have been some interesting, this is a good point to talk about the legacy of this movie, because this movie has a massive legacy. So after the movie came out, originally, Brandon Lee was signed on to do sequels.
Oh. Okay.
But obviously, he died, so he wasn't able to. Now, I don't know what they originally planned to do if he had survived. Like, if they were going to have Eric resurrected again, or if he was going to survive this movie, or if it was going to be a thing where like a reincarnation thing. Like, they do another movie and it's just a guy who happens to look like Eric type of thing.
Right.
So I'm not sure what they originally planned with all of that, but what they did do is after Brandon Lee's death, they did a sequel. The Crow City of Angels came out in 96, 97, I believe, and they had Vincent Perez play a different guy who's resurrected by the Crow, and they brought back Sarah. But she's an adult now, played by Mia Kirshner. It was an interesting movie. It was one of David Goyer's first screenwriting credits. And we could talk about this if we ever decide to, in more depth, if we ever decide to cover that movie. But it's like, if you read the comic that was based on the screenplay, you can tell that they were trying to take the franchise in a different direction. But during production, they got scared and they changed it so it's more like the original as a result. It's this mishmash of a movie. Like, there's things that really work in it and things that don't. And I hated it when I first saw it, but I've kind of developed a new appreciation for it afterwards. 2 other sequels after that were direct to video. One was The Crow Salvation, came out in like 99, 2000, 2001, something like that. And that was direct to video, and it was starring Eric Mabius. Kirsten Dunst was also in that one, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then they did, fourth and final movie was called The Crow Wicked Prayer. It was also direct to video, but interestingly, they had some names you'd recognize in this. So the main character, the guy who gets resurrected, was played by Edward Furlong from Terminator 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know him.
And David Boreanaz played the main villain.
Oh, Angel.
Angel, yeah. Tara Reid played one of the villains as well. So did Dennis Hopper. This movie, Wicked Prayer, it's absolutely fucking terrible. But you want to watch it just for Dennis Hopper. Because it's clear Dennis Hopper came to this set and he's just like, you know what? I'm just going to be high the entire fucking time I'm doing this movie.
Okay.
He's just off his rocker the entire movie, and it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, now see, that I would want to see just for Dennis Hopper. Well, I mean, hey, he's Dennis Hopper. Who don't want to see Dennis Hopper in anything? Yeah. And
David Boreanaz, he tries really hard, despite the movie being total dog shit, but he commits.
And you would figure, because while I was watching this movie, I was saying, yeah, well, you know what? You could easily do this as a series of movies, and the Crow comes and resurrects somebody different in each movie.
And that's what they did in the comics too. There are other comics too that went with the same approach. They also did. There were also a series of novels that also did that. Where each one they have a different person who's resurrected.
Yeah.
But you know what? The thing about Wicked Prayer that I think that they really missed the boat on is you've got David Boreanaz, right? He's signed on to do this movie. David Boreanaz is known for playing an undead, tragic Avenger character. Why don't you have David Boreanaz play the Crow?
Maybe he didn't want to do it. Maybe,
but
you know what?
Maybe. I mean, but it just seems so.
Maybe they did hire him, to play the Crow, but then later he might have went to him and said, "Well, you know what? I want to do the bad guy instead." Maybe.
It just seems like such a missed opportunity because Edward Furlong in this movie is just. He's terrible. He's awful in it. But David Boreanaz, like, I could see him playing that main character. And he would have done a great job. So I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity there. And then you had the TV show, The Crow Stairway to Heaven, which lasted one season. It was only like 22 episodes. And they had Mark Dacascos played Eric Draven in that. They remade the story of the movie, except it ends and Eric doesn't die at the end, right? He keeps on going. And the whole series is about redemption. But it was kind of weird because he doesn't really kill anyone in the show because they had to worry about network TV ratings and all that kind of stuff. It was low budget, so it was filmed mostly during the day, which doesn't work very well for The Crow. So it's very much like one of those, it's on like one of those lesser known affiliate networks on Saturday afternoon type of shows.
This sounds like this was one of those shows that came out during the big syndication boom. Where
it was, exactly.
When you turn on your TV on Saturday and Sunday afternoon back then, it was like, I mean, nothing but syndicated shows. That's what it was. It was.
You had Highlander the series, Poltergeist the series, Hercules, Xena, Mortal Kombat.
What was it? There was a Tomb Raider knockoff.
Oh, Relic Hunter with Tia
Relic
Carrere.
Hunter. Yeah, Relic Hunter. There was another one. There was the Indiana Jones knockoff, but set in modern day. I think it was Adventure Unlimited or Adventure Incorporated or something like that.
You had the Pamela Anderson one, VIP.
Yeah, the Pamela Anderson. You had, matter of fact, there was a RoboCop one, Prime Directive.
That's
RoboCop
right.
Prime
Yeah.
Yeah, RoboCop Prime Directive. Yeah. Yeah, so it was like a whole slew of. It was like somebody just said, okay, well, anything that we can get, we're gonna take it and we're gonna make a syndicated show out of it.
Oh yeah,
and throw it up against it and see what.
And it was kind of like, do you remember in the 80s when like they were making cartoons of everything? Like they had even R-rated movies. They had RoboCop. You had
Rambo,
and they turned them into Saturday morning cartoons.
Louis Anderson had a Saturday morning cartoon.
MC Hammer had a cartoon.
Yeah, Hammerman, where he had these magic shoes.
Yeah, they talked and everything. I remember that show.
Yeah, they talked. Roseanne Barr, for God's sake.
Yeah,
little Roseanne.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was a similar thing in the 90s then, when they had like, they were syndicating everything then.
Gary Coleman had a Saturday morning. For a while, there was like I said, wait a minute, this is insane. It was like every comedian was getting what they had, the Ed Grimley one, based on the character that what's his name did on Saturday Night Live.
You had what was Howie Mandel? You had Bobby's World.
Yeah, Howie Mandel. Yeah.
Oh man, you had so many of those things.
Oh, it was unreal. Yeah, it was like comedians for a while there. They had their own, Saturday morning show.
There was a Knight Rider spinoff too, Team Knight Rider.
Yep, Team Knight Rider.
So yeah, they had all these and The Crow was one of them, and it was, it wasn't like a lot of people will tell you it's a terrible show, and I rewatched it recently, and you know what? It's pretty bad in places, but there's also some good stuff in it too. I really liked Mark Dacascos. I think he's a decent enough actor. One of the things though, you were talking about how Brandon Lee doesn't really do any martial arts in the movie. Well, in the series, Mark Dacascos really leaned into his martial arts background. And they kind of comment in the show where it's like, when did you learn martial arts? And he's like, well, I didn't. I just kind of know it now.
Okay. We'll go with that. That's a guy who really should have had a bigger career, Mark Dacascos. I like him.
I like him too. You know what? I actually interacted with him fairly very briefly, very recently, because I was listening to the Battle Royale audiobook, which, if you've ever seen the movie, it's the greatest Japanese movie ever made, and the book is amazing too. And Dacascos narrated the English translation. I posted on Instagram or Twitter or one of those saying like, I'm listening to the Battle Royale audiobook. Mark Dacascos does a really good job on the narration. He fucking commented on it. He's like, thanks so much. Aloha. You know what? It is really, that is one of the most amazing things about social media now, in that you have people that you would never dream in your wildest imagination would answer you on Twitter or Instagram or even Facebook, and they do so. You know who follows me on Twitter? Who? Your dream woman. Pam Grier? Pam Grier follows me on Twitter, or at least she did at one point. I'm not sure if she still does, but she started following me on Twitter at one point. She thanked me on Twitter. I sent her... Really? Yeah, I sent her my Foxy Brown review. I sent her a link. And, it wasn't nothing big. She just said, oh, that was such a nice review. Thank you very much. And that was it. But, hey, Pam Grier knows who I am now. That's that. No, but really, you would be surprised at how many people I've written a review and I hear from the director, or I hear from some actor that was in the movie, no big star, but somebody that was in the movie, and I pointed out, so-and-so did a nice role and blah, 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 blah. And they'll say, oh, thanks a lot, for it. I said, wow, that's how I met, what's his name? Dave Cunt. I hope I pronounced his last name right. I know I'm going to mangle it. But he wrote the movie Authors Anonymous. Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah. And
we became friends over Facebook. And when he came to Brooklyn, we met up. Man, we
cool.
went out to breakfast, everything like that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really remarkable that, people will, the famous people, they'll answer you and they say, oh, thanks a lot.
Well, yeah, a few years ago, I did this this list article, like, top 5 reasons that Angel was better than Buffy, because I had just gone through a marathon of both of the shows after, years of not seeing them. So I did this article and I posted on Twitter, and Juliet Landau we ended up tweeting the article and following me because of that.
Wow, cool.
She played Drusilla on both those shows.
Yeah. And yes, Angel is better than Buffy.
Yeah, sorry guys, but it's just a fact.
I like Buffy. Don't get me wrong. I
love Buffy.
I like Buffy, but I love Angel.
Yeah, I think Angel took it a step higher.
Yeah, it kicked it up a notch.
Except for the 4th season, but that we less said about that one is the better.
Okay.
Also in the Crow TV show, they had Albrecht was a detective in that, and they had Mark Gomes played him, and he did I really liked the interplay. It's very different from Brandon Lee and Ernie Hudson. Like Mark Gomes and Mark Dacascos, they have a very different working relationship, and it works very well for the TV show. And I like the way that they played off each other. Like their chemistry was one of the reasons that I kept watching the show. And the tragic thing about the show is that eventually it started to find its feet in like the latter half of the first season, and then it ends on a cliffhanger. And then they decided not to renew it for a 2nd season.
Oh, I hate when they do that.
And they tried. It was Bryce Zabel was the producer on that show, who also did the Mantis TV show.
Oh my God, one of the most underrated TV shows of all time.
Yeah, he did The Crow Stairway to Heaven, and he tried really hard to get something else coming from it. Like, he tried to get it done as a made-for-TV movie or something to wrap up the plot lines, but just they weren't ever able to get anything out of it.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times now I really won't start watching a TV series until like the 2nd or even the 3rd season, because I'm really getting tired of being burnt with these shows. And some of them, I'm saying, oh, this is really good and everything like that. And it's only 1 season and then they don't bring it back. So now I've been invested all this time in the show and you're not bringing it back. Thanks a lot.
Talking about the legacy of The Crow, they did try to make some other movies too. Like Rob Zombie at one point was going to direct a movie called The Crow 2037 World of Gods and Monsters. It was going to be like in a post-apocalyptic world, and it was going to be like lots of like fantasy sci-fi. It would have been like Mad Max mixed with like horror movies and like monster movies with The Crow. I mean, it would have been, it sounds like it would have been absolutely batshit awesome. And they never did it because they thought, well, this is too, they said we were going to do it as a different, something, its own property, because it doesn't really need The Crow to be done. It was, for a while, it was going to be called like Black Rider X, but then I guess it eventually just got dropped completely, which is too bad because I really would have rather seen that than his white trash horror movies.
Yeah, Rob Zombie, I was just talking about this to somebody the other day. You know what? He's kind of a hit or miss director with me. You know, when he's good, like I like The Lords of Salem.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? The Devil's Rejects, which to me is probably his best movie. But like the Halloween movies was, that was unnecessary. I mean, nobody really needed an origin story for Michael Myers. And then there is that nagging feeling that I always get that he just keeps making movies just to give his wife something to do. Yeah.
Like, I wish he would have made this movie because he just keeps... He's really obsessed with white trash horror movies. Like, I don't know what it is. But like he turned Michael Myers from a white trash family type of thing.
When I first became acquainted with him, he was actually hosting on Turner Classic Movies. He was hosting their Underground series Friday nights where they were showing like all kinds of exploitation movies. And I was really impressed with his knowledge of film. Rob Zombie had extensive knowledge of film, period. Not just horror movies. And I don't think that he's really, found that one movie that really hit big with, but he's interesting to watch. Let me put it that way. And if he had did this Crow movie, I have no doubt that it would have been, if nothing else, it would have been interesting. Let me put it that way. It would have been interesting.
Absolutely. And it would have been a lot more interesting than the other two direct-to-video movies they made. They have tried to remake The Crow on several times. So Sony has the distribution rights for it. Some guy named Samuel Hadida is financing the film, and they've tried this remake a few times. At one point, it was going to be Mark Wahlberg was involved in it. Another point, Bradley Cooper, Luke Evans, Jack Houston. The most recent one, Jason Momoa.
Oh, okay. Now that's interesting.
It would have been interesting because the director, who was Colin Hardley, he said they were going to go back to the original comic and they were going to make it. They were going to try and make a new adaptation of the comic. They weren't going to try and remake the Proyas movie, which is how I would do it. Because, like I said, there's a lot of differences from the comic, so it would be interesting to do it that way.
Okay, let's face it. Who could do? I mean, listen, it's complete folly to try to remake what Alex Proyas did. Just go off and do your own thing, and don't worry about trying to remake. Because you know what? If you're going to do that, then why not just get him back and say, "Listen, well, we want you to do this again."
Well, Proyas himself, he said that he wrote an open letter on Facebook saying that it should never be remade. So he did kind of like Harry Ells did with The Princess Bride recently.
Well, you know what? In a perfect world, what they would do is that they would remake movies that have failed. Yeah. And I don't think that The Crow failed. It was just a movie. Okay, let me put it this way. If this was a movie that came out now, this would make $100 million at the box office the first weekend.
Oh, easily. Definitely.
It was a movie that was ahead of it was a movie that was definitely ahead of its time. Just like Dark City was ahead of its time. There's some movies that, just made at the wrong time. This was made at the wrong time. If The Crow came out now, in the current climate that we have where superheroes are more, because this is one of those movies when it came out, nobody knew what to make of it. I mean, there's so many different things. It's an action movie. It's a revenge movie.
I remember seeing the TV spots when this came out in the theaters, and I'm just like, what is this?
Right, exactly. Nobody knew what to make of it.
It was one of the, they didn't really know how to market this movie. And then you add in the fact that you've got the shadow of Brandon Lee's death hanging over it as well.
You had some people that went to see it primarily because they said, well, we're going to go see because this is the movie where the guy, got killed. I mean, making it. But then again, you also, for every person who went to see it because of that, you had two people who didn't go see it because of that. Yeah.
I think now we should probably talk a little bit about Brandon Lee and the tragedy that happened on set. So how much do you know about what actually happened on the set?
A gun was loaded, and apparently the stunt people didn't have the right sort of blank cartridge that was supposed to go into it, and they substituted something else.
The scene required for a gun to be loaded, cocked, and then pointed at the camera. And because it was a close-range shot, the dummy cartridges had to have real brass caps, but no gunpowder in it. After the cut, the prop master dry-fired the gun to get the cock off, which knocked the fake bullet into the barrel of the gun, and it got stuck there. He didn't realize it. So then the next day, it was loaded with blanks. The script called for Brandon Lee to enter carrying a bag of groceries, and inside the bag of groceries were squibs that were going to go off when the gun was fired to give the illusion that he was getting shot, and an explosive blood pack. Michael Massey fires the gun, and the blank ends up propelling the fake bullet out through, and then it went through the grocery bag and hit Brandon Lee in the abdomen. And when the director called cut, and Brandon Lee is keeling over on the ground, and everybody thinks everyone gives him a standing ovation because they think he's still in character.
Right? Yeah, exactly. They thought he was, oh wow, he didn't break. But such was not the case. This was pretty much basically the same screw up killed another actor, John Eric Hexum.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you're familiar with the name. He did a short-lived science fiction series called Voyager, The Time Traveler.
Oh, okay.
And then he did another series after that called Cover Up, where he played a spy. It was him and some woman, I can't think of her name right now, but they played spies, and like their covers was that they were fashion models. Yeah, and he was killed pretty much by the same accident that killed Brandon Lee. But here's the thing about Brandon Lee: for the longest time, the rumor persisted that he was killed on purpose because of his father.
Right. Yeah. This is this long-standing. Conspiracy theorists will find a conspiracy in anything. Right. It's unbelievable, and they think that like the triads were out to kill Brandon Lee.
Yeah. Supposedly Bruce Lee, he was in trouble with like martial artists. Native land, because they were upset that he was teaching martial arts, to Westerners. Period. They were. Supposedly he was in trouble with the triads. I mean, there was a whole bunch of theories that were being flown and thrown around that Brandon Lee was killed by the triads or whoever, for whatever was imagined or real that his father had done.
There's also a lot of myths surrounding Lee's death. Like, one of the myths is that he actually died. He was killed in the big shootout scene in the club, that big action scene, right, with all the guns going off. So one of the long-standing rumors was that was the scene where he got shot, but that wasn't it. It was actually one of the flashback scenes. And then another rumor that I've heard a lot is that the footage of him getting shot was used in the film, which it wasn't. Like, the footage was developed because it was used as evidence in the investigation, but it wasn't. Obviously, they didn't actually use it in the final cut of the movie.
Oh, no, of course not. And yeah, there was an extensive investigation. I mean, that thing went on for years. Yeah.
And the footage was destroyed after that.
Yeah, right. I've heard that. Yeah, that they destroyed it after. You know what? Thank God they did, because I guarantee you that if the footage still existed, you go on YouTube now.
Oh God, yeah. And there's just some things that you should not be distributed like that.
No, I mean, you know what? But there are some sick people in this world that wouldn't want to see that. But there's some things that you shouldn't see.
Now, Brandon Lee actually wasn't finished filming the movie when he died.
I believe that they used not only a stunt double, but this was like one of the first films where they used CGI.
Right. So the scene where he puts on his makeup, that was a body double, and the face in the mirror was Lee's, but that was computer altered to fit the shards. And then that iconic scene where he's walking towards the window and the crow's on his shoulder and the lightning flashes. That's not actually Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
That's his face put on a body double, which, it's incredible when you think about it, because that's such an iconic shot in that movie.
And you think that, that really should have been him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is him in a way, but you know what I'm trying to say. You want that was actually 100% him.
And actually, it was his family campaigned to get the movie finished, because after his death, Proyas is like, that's it, we're shutting down. We're not finishing this movie. His family, like his fiance, his mother, his sister, they campaigned. They're like, look, he really wanted to do this movie. He was so invested in it. It would dishonor his memory not to finish the movie.
And as we have seen, they were right, because here we are now. We're still, and this movie is like 30 years old now?
94. Yeah, wow. It's like 25 years old now.
Yeah, 25 years old, and here it is. We're still talking about it. It's still being discovered. And I have no doubt it's still going to be discovered another 25 years from now, because I have become a believer. It is that good of a movie. Seriously.
There's now, in addition to Brandon Lee, like Michael Massey, who fired the shot, he stopped acting for a year after this movie. Like, he was so traumatized by this. And then he did finally get back into acting. He had a small part in Seven. He was in the Amazing Spider-Man movie. He was the guy at the end of the movie, and he was also in. He was on a few episodes of Supernatural, but 12 years after the shooting, he still said that he had nightmares of it.
Shit. Hey, listen, quite understandable. I mean,
and then you had
even though
Rochelle Davis, who played Sarah, she never acted again. She was so traumatized by the incident.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. See, that I did not know. Okay. Yeah. But you know something? That's understandable because, I can't even imagine being on a movie set and, somebody does get shot, and especially when everybody's cheering and applauding and you're thinking that the guy is just staying in character, and he's really been shot. And I'm sure that you had some people that were saying, well, you know something, maybe if I had moved a little quicker, if I had realized, what was going on, what was happening, I could have saved his life. I'm fairly sure that there's a lot of people that said, that went through their mind.
Yeah. Well, James O'Barr, who created the comic, like he says with the proceeds from this movie, from the profits he made of this movie, he bought his mother a car, and then he bought himself a surround stereo system, and then he donated the rest of it because it felt like blood money to him.
Okay. I understand. Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
You don't want to feel like you're profiting from, somebody's death, however accidental it was. And you may not feel like you were the cause of it, but still, you don't want to feel like, okay, well, I'm making money from somebody dying, at least let me take the money and do something, profitable.
Now, there's something else about this movie which you probably don't know, but there was originally supposed to be another character in the movie, another supernatural character, in fact. In the movie, Eric was originally supposed to have a supernatural guide, who was called the Skull Cowboy. And he was this guy who had kind of this appearance of like a decaying corpse, and he wore like an old duster and like a cowboy hat, and he was going to be like a supernatural guide for Eric, who kind of explains things to him. In the scene where he kills Fun Boy, right? There's nothing on his arms, on Eric's arms, right? Okay. But then the next time you see him, he's got electrical tape wrapped around his arms and his torso.
And his torso, yeah.
What happened was that scene, there's another part of that scene. So you see Eric picks up the syringe, and then it cuts. And then you see Grange come in, and he sees Fun Boy on the bed with the needle sticking out of him. What was originally supposed to happen is, and you can see this on probably on the Blu-ray, Fun Boy gets up out of the tub, and he takes a straight razor and he starts attacking Eric. And Eric lifts up his arms to defend himself, and he's cut, but the cuts aren't healing. Then Fun Boy grabs like a bag of cocaine, takes like this big snort of cocaine, and he's still going after him. And eventually Eric overpowers him. Now the thing is, the reason that the cuts didn't heal was because the Skull Cowboy plotline. The Skull Cowboy told him, you can't interfere in the affairs of the living, right? You're only here to avenge your death. So Eric getting involved with Darla and, basically telling her to be a good mother, that was him getting involved in the affairs of the living. So because of that, he lost his powers when Fun Boy attacked him. And that's why after that, he's got the electrical tape around his arm. So it's this sudden change in the movie, which it looks awesome with having that electrical tape on there. It looks really good effect that adds to the character's overall look. But there's no real reason for it to happen in the movie.
And it's funny you bring that up because, okay, I saw he had the electrical tape wrapped around him. And at first I just said to myself, okay, well, he probably did that to stop the bleeding from when him. But we have seen when he got cut and shot before, the wounds healed up. You say it is an awesome look.
Yeah. So these scenes, I just looked them up. They are on YouTube. So you can look up on YouTube and you can see the scenes with the Skull Cowboy. There's also another scene when right before when Top Dollar kidnaps Sarah, right? Eric goes to save her, and in front of the church, the Skull Cowboy appears before him, and he says, it's time for you to go. And Eric refuses. He says, I can't. I have to save Sarah. And the Skull Cowboy warns him that then you'll die, or you'll be damned, or something like that. And so then that's actually how Eric originally loses his powers. was because he was going after Sarah instead of completing his mission.
Because on Netflix, I'm watching it on Netflix, and it seems like he's just losing his power for no reason. But of course, I'm sitting there and I'm rationalizing it away because Bai Ling, she grabs the crow.
Well, yeah, that's actually why they changed it, because they thought having another supernatural character was too much for the movie. And they thought the character was a bit too expository. So they decided to cut him out. And then they put the focus on the crow being the source of his powers. So there's that scene when they're in the car after the big shootout, and she says he has power, but it's power you can take from him. And he says the crow is his link. And then Grange says, so you kill the crow and you destroy the man.
And you know something that actually works much better, because this is a movie that, like I said before, you don't need a whole lot of explanation for this movie. And yeah, I think that having another supernatural character to come along and explain stuff would take, because see me, I'm the type of person, I don't mind sitting there and having to fill in the blanks. You don't need every little thing to me. Leave some stuff for me to figure out. Make me feel like I'm part of the process of watching the movie. I know some people have every little thing explained and then not happy until, which is why I really have a problem with Star Wars fans in the last couple of years. Seriously, I mean, I don't need to know where Snoke came from. I don't need to know what happened to the Emperor. Really shit. Yeah. Thank you. I don't need that. I don't need to have every little thing explained. Leave something for me to do.
And it's kind of like I totally understand that, and it's kind of disappointing because the look was really awesome. In fact, I'm sending you some pictures of the character now, so you can see what he looked like.
Oh, thank you.
So if you check your Skype chat, you can have a look there.
Oh my God! Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That was a really awesome look. They did a really good job of the makeup. And I actually haven't seen these scenes, which I just found out they're on YouTube. I'm going to be watching them once we finish up with this recording. On the one hand, it works so much better from a narrative standpoint not to have that character in the movie. On the other hand, man, they did an awesome job in that design. Like this character, I've had, I told you about my idea for a Old West supernatural gunfighter. It's based on Skull Cowboy, this image.
That's a powerful image that, now you can see that a lot of work went into that character. That wasn't just thrown together.
No, it was a lot of work. Now, the character did appear. Gorgeous. So he was inspired by, there's, in the original comic, there are a few scenes where you see a skeleton dressed in wearing a hat and a suit. So that was kind of like the inspiration, but he has no real role in the story. It's just kind of like an avatar of death in the comic. And then so then they made it into the Skull Cowboy to act as kind of a mentor for Eric. And when they cut him out, but the character ended up being used in other stuff later. So he appeared in the TV show, The Crow's Stairway to Heaven, although he wasn't done up in makeup. He was just a regular guy who wore a cowboy hat. And he carried like a skull keychain type of thing, because they weren't going to do all that makeup for him. And then he also appeared as a skeleton figure dressed as a cowboy in Image's Crow comic book.
Why cowboy though?
And it's because the original artwork here. Let me show you the original one. It kind of looked like a cowboy. So they decided to kind of lean into that. Here's from the original comic.
Oh, okay.
So it was just kind of like a symbol for death in the comic, and he appears a few times.
Oh, okay. No, because I'm just thinking, because, this is the city, and it just seems to me, I'm seeing what this is the original artwork, right, from the comic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So now I think what the backstory, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but if you look at the makeup, it looks like he's got ratty hair and decaying flesh. So I think the idea is that this guy was a crow himself who got involved in the affairs of the living, and now he's stuck.
Okay, yeah. See, I can go, yeah. See, the guy who had the job beforehand and who met messed up before. It's his job now to tell the guy, listen, this is what's going to happen to you if you mess around with the affairs of living. Just do what you got to do. Just do what you got to do, then crawl back in your grave and everything will be fine.
And in fact, in the sequel, The City of Angels, the original way it was going to end was that Ash, who Vincent Perez's character, he gave up his chance to go back to the land of the dead after he finished his mission. So they were going to give him that ending where he continues on after, and he's still alive and he's still wandering the earth. But then they changed it because they wanted to make it more like the original, which was, I think, a mistake. It would have been better if they had tried to do something different.
That's the curse of Hollywood, that they want to duplicate what succeeded so badly that they will sacrifice creativity to play it safe and say, okay, well, this worked the first time, so let's just do the same thing again, instead of, like you said, going off in a completely different direction, which is what you could do with a character like the Crow. You could have conceivably any type of character be brought back to life and by the Crow, and tell a completely different story in each movie. Mm-hmm. Which, matter of fact, you could even do it as a TV series every week. Somebody gets brought back from the dead, or each season do it, like a season-long story arc. Somebody gets brought back from the dead, and their death, or the death of a loved one, or whatever, and you could have a whole variety of characters. It's a cliche, yes, but sometimes cliches become cliches because they are true. Like this, you're only limited by your imagination.
Yeah. And some of the books and the comics, they've gone in interesting directions. Like James O'Barr did 2 other comic books with this concept. One of them had a guy who was a Native American, and he was married to a white woman and they were killed by a group of rebel soldiers. Then, in the modern day, is when he gets brought back, and those soldiers have been reincarnated as a biker gang. So that's how they did that one. And then he did another one that was set during the Holocaust, which I haven't read that one. But they also there was another one, not all were written by him, but there was another one where it was a woman was resurrected. There was another one where I think a child was resurrected at one point as well, too. So they have gone in a lot of different directions, and it's been some pretty interesting takes.
You could do one during the 60s. You could have a Martin Luther King type of civil rights leader get assassinated. He's brought back.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So many different ways you could comment on like different things that have happened in history. There's so many different directions you can go in with that concept.
No, well, this is what I'm saying. You're only limited by, you could conceivably go to any time in like American history or even world history. Who says you got to be America? You could, go to Japan. You could go to Africa. You could go to Europe. And you could, because this is a supernatural creature. The Crow. So it's not limited by, time or space.
Well, like the Assassin's Creed games, right? They're all in different time periods. You could easily do that with a concept like the Crow.
You could do it with multiple characters, multiple time periods. Whatever. The old, you could do the Old West. You could have remember when the Chinese, you could have one of them get killed.
Oh, yeah, the railroad. Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah, one of them gets...
So much stuff you can do there, yeah.
Yeah, so there's so much you can do. So much.
Now, do you know speaking of there's so much you can do, there's also some things you shouldn't do. So do you know what the original idea was that the studio execs had in mind for this movie when they first met with O'Barr?
No, but I can only guess.
Okay. They were sitting at this meeting, and someone suggests, look, we can do this as a musical, and we get Michael Jackson to play the lead character. And James O'Barr, he heard this, and he just bursts out laughing. And because he thinks the guy's making a joke. And everyone else at the table, they're looking at him like he's out of his mind. So that was originally what they wanted to do. They wanted to turn it into a Michael Jackson musical. And then it was only when they hired Brandon Lee and Alex Proyas, that they came in and they said, no, we're sticking to the original source material.
And you know something? No problem believing that, because that's not the craziest story I've ever heard, that, you know, like some brain dead suit, wanted to do, because they have, the only thing that they're looking at is what they can sell. Basically, that's all they're doing. And Michael Jackson was, of course, the number one star in the world at that time. And they wanted to put him in a whole bunch of different things, believe it or not. They wanted to put Michael Jackson to a whole bunch of different movies in different movies.
At one point, they wanted to do Green Lantern with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And then later they wanted to do it with Jack Black.
Yeah, for the longest time, Green Lantern was supposed to be a comedy.
Yeah. Oh, here's interesting piece of trivia about this, too. So you mentioned David Patrick Kelly from The Warriors. The Warriors was one of Brandon Lee's favorite movies. And so when T-Bird drives off the dock, right, and Eric waves goodbye to him, right?
Yeah.
And he's using 3 fingers to wave goodbye. Apparently, that's a direct reference to Kelly's character, iconic and creepy taunting of the Warriors with miniature bottles.
Yeah, with Coke bottles, with the small Coke bottles that he's...
Yeah.
Warriors come out to play, yay.
Yeah. So that was like a reference Brandon Lee threw in to the Warriors when he was waving goodbye to David Patrick Kelly.
See, now I got to go back just to see that again, to see if that, because you can't tell me these things. So when you tell me these things, that make me want to go back and watch the movie. See, that does not give me an excuse to go back and watch. I got to watch the whole movie, just see that. They're probably only going to last about 2 seconds. But it's things like that we do love about movies like this. It's little things that you notice at first, but they enhance our enjoyment of the movie. First of all, I love Patrick Kelly in anything. The guy is like a brilliant actor, and he does.
Well, he's a classically trained actor. He does so much
with this character in this movie. Even though, to be honest, he doesn't have a lot of screen time.
No, not really. But he's got a lot of presence. Also, the guy who plays Tintin as well. He's got like a lot of presence in the movie.
And again, he's another guy that doesn't have a lot of screen time. But everybody that's in this movie, in fact, they make the most of whatever screen time they have. For however short of a time they're on screen. Sarah's mother, Darla, she's really not on screen all that much, but you remember her.
Yeah. She's another one who's been in a bunch of different stuff, actually.
Yeah, when I saw her, and I can't think of her name, but she's like one of these people.
Anna Levine.
Yeah, she's one of these people that when you see her, you say,
she was in
I've seen her in a whole bunch. Huh?
Unforgiven. She was the hooker who got her face cut.
She was the hooker that got her face cut up. That's right. There you go.
And she was also in True Romance. She played Lucy.
Okay, it's been a while. Seen True Romance. I'd have to watch that again.
Yeah, I don't remember Lucy, but she was in that as well. She was in Fatal Attraction. She played a secretary. She was an extra in Wall Street. She played a bunch of characters on the Tracy Ullman Show. And she's one of these women that, she's okay. Here's where I show that I'm completely sexist. She's not what you would call like a raving beauty, but there's something tremendously sexy about her. Yeah. She's got this. There's this quality about her that's kind of right. That's attractive.
You wouldn't look at her and say who can I just pull out of my ass real quick? Like Angela Jolie. You look at Angela Jolie and say, oh wow. You look at this chick and you wouldn't say that, but the longer you look at her, the sexier she gets.
All right, so that brings us, I think we're pretty much to the end. Do you have any final thoughts to talk about The Crow?
Only that, and I may have said this before, and if I did, folks, excuse me for repeating myself, but one thing I like to do is that I like to revisit movies that I may not have liked the first time around I saw it, or even the second time I saw it, because I found that as I get older and my tastes change, that I can watch a movie later on that at first I discounted or didn't like or whatever, and I find something new in it. And I found something new in The Crow. You know, like I said earlier, I haven't seen it in about 10 years, but I saw it today, and now appreciation and respect for this movie in the way it tells its story. This is a movie. You know what? There's a whole bunch of movies that modern, they should sit them down in front and make them watch them before they make their movie. This is one of the movies that I would give to a novice filmmaker and say, you're watching this. This is how to tell a story, you know, with a minimum of fuss. You know, you're just telling the story. You know, I went to see Ad Astra yesterday. The difference between these two movies, because Crow knows how to tell a story, and it tells that story with a minimum of fuss. It knows the movie, and it doesn't try to be any more than that. I think that is the best and the highest compliment that I could pay any movie, is that what it is, and it is the best at what it's trying to be, and it doesn't try to be anything more than that. That's what The Crow is. It knows exactly the movie it is.
Exactly, yeah.
And it delivers.
It does. It delivers. And, you know, like you said, it's very tight. It never wastes your time, not for a second.
No.
And it's a movie that actually, because it doesn't waste a second on exposition and all that, it's a movie that really rewards multiple viewings, because you start noticing other things in the background.
Yeah. And because I think after all of these little tidbits and everything like that you told me, I think I'm going to give it a couple of days and then I'm going to watch it again.
Go to our website. You know, you can watch it with our affiliate link to Amazon, and then we get a little bit of cash that I'm going to keep quiet from Derrick.
Okay. Fair enough.
And like I said, like, this was a huge influence on me. I went as the Crow for like 5 Halloweens in a row after watching this movie. No, I grew my hair out long when I was a teenager. Yeah, everything.
You really loved it that much, huh?
Oh yeah, man. I was obsessed with this movie. You know how when you're a teenager, like, you get obsessed over like that one thing? It was this movie for a large part of my adolescence. And
I can understand that, because I saw Star Wars in my senior year of high school. And yeah, that was it. For me, like, I mean, forget about it. I was all into Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know, and notice about The Crow in that it's a movie that I really can't ever really imagine that I've heard anybody say that they don't like this movie. Everybody who's seen this movie love, you know, everybody. And for the longest time, I didn't dislike it, but I just didn't see what everybody else saw in it. Because everybody I know absolutely, they love The Crow. They just don't love The Crow. They love The Crow.
Yeah. So yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, you owe it to yourself to watch it. It's great, and it's one of the early superhero movies that really elevates the genre to a new level. Because like Darkman was the first R-rated superhero movie, but that was it was very tongue in cheek. This one, it's much more balanced throughout.
Yeah, and there are adult themes in this movie that are handled and presented to us as if we are. You know, like there are some superhero movies that say, oh, we have these adult themes in there, but it's not. They're more like a 14-year-old idea of what an adult theme is, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. The Mark Millar style of storytelling.
Right. Yeah, this is an adult movie. This is an adult superhero movie made for adults, real adults.
Intelligent adults. It's an intelligent adult movie.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so this week I chose the movie. Like I chose The Crow for this episode. So that means we're tossing the ball back to you. Derrick, what are we watching next?
I don't know. You know what? I was thinking either Supergirl or Swamp Thing.
Okay, those are some interesting choices.
What do you think?
I would say let's go with Swamp Thing because it's different from Supergirl's a bit too close to Superman. So let's go with Swamp Thing to vary it up a little bit more.
That's what I was thinking too. Though, since we did The Crow, and let's stay with that theme with, superheroes that are a little bit off the beaten track. And it's been also like The Crow, it's been about 10 years since I've seen Swamp Thing. So again, this is a movie I'd like to revisit and see if my of it has changed any.
And this is the one that Wes Craven directed, right?
Yeah, this is the one with Adrian Barbeau and Louis Jordan.
I think I've only seen this movie once, and it was like on TV like a lifetime ago. So it'll be really interesting to go and see it again. Right.
That's what I'm saying, because it's been about like 10, like I said, know what? It may have even been like 15 years since I've seen this. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie. Yeah.
I'm going to head out to the video store, see if they got it at my local video store, which we still have video stores in Japan, believe it or not.
No fooling.
Yeah.
The only video stores we got around here, which I'm also surprised about, that there are a couple of XXX video stores that's still hanging on.
We got some of them. They've got a XXX section in the video stores here too.
There's a XXX video store. As a matter of fact, it's not too far from the Micro Center where I go to, because I've got a Micro Center about a 20-minute drive away from me. And it's on the same. No, it's not on the same block. It's across the street. Yeah, it's across the street from the Micro Center I go to.
So yeah, this will be really interesting because I actually just finished reading about a few months ago. I finished reading the Alan Moore saga of the Swamp Thing for the first time. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to this, and
especially since now. I'm going to confession right here, and I'm just going to leave it with y'all folks for now. Would you believe I've never read a Swamp Thing comic?
No shit, really?
Yeah, I've never read a Swamp Thing comic. Not one single issue of a Swamp Thing comic. The only way I know the character, I know it from that one movie. That's it. I know it's a comic book, but I've never read so much as a single issue.
Now, the Alan Moore run is classic. It's really good. You should definitely track that down at some point.
And don't ask me why I've never read it. It's not I have any aversion to the character, but it's just, and I love Alan Moore. It's just that for some reason I've never said, you know what, I have to read Swamp Thing.
Well, you know what? I can understand that because I read the first volume like years ago, but I just never got around to picking up the rest of them. And then I picked them up when Comixology had a Vertigo sale, and I picked up all the entire run. But yeah, up until like I just said, like a few months ago, I finished reading it, and that was like the first time I'd read it all the way through. A
lot of DC supernatural characters, I've never really been interested in that side of like I've read Doctor Strange, I've read, the Phantom Stranger, but stuff like, Constantine. No, I've never read a single issue of that.
Really?
Constantine, Swamp Thing, I've never, never. For some reason, that's never interested me.
That's interesting, because you like, because you're a Doctor Strange fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I've read Doctor Strange.
You like the Marvel mystical stuff, but you don't lean as much into the DC stuff.
I read the Phantom Stranger.
Oh, okay.
Back in the I think it was the early 70s when he had a brief run, Jim Aparo.
Oh, right, yeah.
Drew the comic, and I've read the Demon. Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby's Demon.
The Demon, but. Yeah, but like outside of that, for some reason, I've never really been interested in, the mystical, magical, kind of characters. They've they've never done anything for me.
That's interesting.
Don't ask me why.
I never knew that about you. That's really, that's interesting. Okay, so this will be. So I'll be coming at it with more of a knowledge of the comics then for this next one. Yeah, and my knowledge of the comics is not even that extensive to begin with. So both of us are going into this a little bit blind.
As a matter of fact, now I want to read the comic now. I don't want to read it now until I've seen the movie. I want to watch the movie again because it's going to be talking about the movie. Yeah, I don't want to bring all the back
right
to the movie. I just want to watch the movie and discuss the movie as the movie on its own terms.
Right. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing next time. In 2 weeks, join us again. We'll be talking Swamp Thing. Thanks so much for listening. As always, guys, all the support you've been given has been wonderful. One thing you can do that would help us out immensely is go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for this show. Because those reviews, we can use that to get...
Absolutely.
We can get sponsorship for the podcast, and then, I can hide that money from Derrick a little bit more, and I can start building up my retirement.
You're learning, kid. Embezzle that money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. SuperheroCinephiles.com. You can find links to where you can rent these movies or buy them on Amazon. We get a little kickback if you do that. Apple Podcasts, go and leave a review. Twitter, we're at Super Cinema Pod. Facebook page, facebook.com/superherocinephiles. And now we've got a Facebook group. Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook group. So if you go, you can find the link from the Facebook page, or you can just search for it, and Derrick and I are on there. We're posting stuff about superhero movies. Derrick will probably be posting some more of his superhero reviews and movie reviews in general. And yeah, we've got a few good people already joined up with the group.
Oh, a lot of good people. Yeah, a lot of good people that we've known for years. And you know what? I'm thinking I will most likely in the next couple of days sit down after I watch it again. I'm going to give it a couple of days and I'm going to let it marinate. Then I'm going to watch it again. I'll probably The Crow. And once I do, I will post it up, for everybody to read.
And if you guys have never read Derrick's reviews, they're awesome. He goes really in depth, just like the kind of stuff we talk about here, but in written form. And it's really insightful commentary. You got to check him out.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything else you wanted to plug right now, or you all set? Or are you good for this week?
I'm good for this week. The next one we're going to be doing is going to be in October, so I definitely will have something to plug then.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm going to wait till then. I'm going to wait till the next episode.
Okay, sounds good. If by the time this episode drops, my other podcast, Japan on Film, will be back up with third season, and in that episode, I'm talking about Battle Royale, which I mentioned earlier is the greatest Japanese movie ever made.
Oh, cool! I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to listen to that. By the time you can hear this, it will be up on JapanOnFilm.com. So go ahead and check that out.
Because you were the guy that got me to watch that movie.
That's right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how you look at it after you listen to that, because my opinion on it changed after living in Japan for so long. Because first time I watched it was before I even came here, and then I didn't watch it again until last year. So it gave me a whole different perspective on it.
Interesting. I would definitely be interested in hearing what you got to say about it.
Again, thanks so much for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, folks. Good night. God bless. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, or if you have a superhero movie or TV show you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can email us at superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can also visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Each review helps us reach more potential listeners. You can also support the show by renting or purchasing the movies discussed, or by picking up our books, all of which can be accessed through the website, as well as find links to our social media presences. The theme music for this show is a shortened version of Superhero Showdown, a royalty-free piece of music courtesy of BesleonStudios.com.